say hi, Mom?
No, hot mic. I need to get your logo up, though.
Stina is fine. Stina's gonna. Oh my gosh, you're gonna like try to whip me into shape. I'm gonna like change my. I have to like be presentable, respectable. No, no, nope. I'm gonna say what I want to say. Are we poisoned when I say? Sometimes it's not poison. Sometimes it's poison. Oh. Uh-oh, come on, tell me. Talk to him. Talk to him. You know what I needed to hear. You knew.
Yeah, you do get hype. Yeah, like, right.
You better know your clients. You better know your clients. We pushing that P. Tell me we pushing P. Pushing product. Pushing promotions. What product? Like pushing promo. Come on. Come on, service. the body love goddesses. Thick babies is cute. It's your name for them, so it's cute.
What do we push? Therapy.
I was
Push.
What is your
What's
P
the
though?
P,
What is
though?
your P?
No, we need.
But if you had something that started with a P, what would it be? What would it
which
be?
P would it be?
Pushing patience. Pushing.
Patience.
Oh! Pushing patient. You say
Pushing.
patience or patience?
Patient.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
show can.
Okay.
Yes.
Come on.
Patience.
I like that. Pushing patience.
Power.
Pushing
Yes,
power.
Power.
This is, you like it?
Yeah.
You're giving me energy. Yes.
Can we adapt our own version to this song? So can we make our own adaptation to this song?
Absolutely. I push and I push and I push. Okay, but really, everybody wakes up every day, and this is all they have to say to themselves: just push on through.
Yeah.
Push on through. It does. It does. Tony's bopping over there. Yeah, that's true. That works. Say whatever you want to say. Oh, okay. I can do that. It's not yet, but I can do that. There we go. Bow, bow.
All right, so I'm gonna give you some classrooms. We're down to 1:30.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Farron Kia back at you again with another episode of the Love Thy Belly podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, lots of other places, because if you use Anchor, you can do it anywhere. There's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and some other things that are listed on my website, which is lovethybelly.org. So if you look at my website, then you can know all the places you can find my podcast. But this episode, we're talking about mental health awareness. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we're speaking with the amazing Millicent and the phenomenal Shawita, all about mental health, mental wellness, and how to be the best version of yourself by dealing with your stuff, facing your things, accepting that sometimes we got to avoid our things until we're ready to face our things, because trying to face them head on and you're not ready for it, you know? You might need to take a moment. But Millicent and Shawita are going to tell us a lot more about what mental health means, a little bit about why they've gone into this field and being a Black woman in this field, and how mental health issues, how they specifically affect our Black community, our Black men, our Black women, our Black non-binary and trans people, as well as, importantly, our Black children, who are oftentimes forgotten in these conversations about mental health and wellness. So Millicent, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Millicent. I am a licensed therapist, and I'm also a second-year counseling psychology doc student. And I got into this field because I was a therapist baby myself. So I've been in therapy since I was in high school. I came out of the closet, and as I'm sure we'll talk about throughout this podcast, it can be very hard when you don't get that acceptance that you want from your family, especially being religious. So, I found therapy that way and just had a really successful experience with a therapist. So I said to myself that this is what I want to do, and I hope that I can make the difference that someone made for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Shawita?
Hello, everyone. I'm Shawita Smith. I am the owner and clinical director of Total Life Counseling. We offer community-based services for children as well as adults. I have been in the mental health field for 15 years. I grew up in the west end of Louisville, and I enjoy helping people as well as giving back to the community. And I'm very passionate. I'm also a doctorate student. I have one more year. I attend Spalding.
Whew. So we got a LCSW doctoral student, a LPCA doctoral student. Oh, y'all in for it today. Okay, we got the professionals. The doctor professionals talking. So with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, what are some things that you feel like, specifically as a Black community, that we could do to center that a lot more in maybe things that we're doing, conversations that we're having, and things of that nature?
I feel that we need to start by bringing the awareness to the community regarding mental health and bringing down the stigma of receiving mental health services. A lot of times within the Black community, people see mental health as being something that's taboo, and they don't seek out mental health services. They'll go to the gym, they'll get hair, nails, makeup done, but they just don't address their mental health, and that's a big issue.
It is, and I would like to just add to that by saying that also I think religion plays a huge part in that too. I remember one time a friend told me she told her parents that she was depressed, and they said, you better go downstairs and depress them dishes. So it's just very, very religious background too, and I think that people don't understand too. So with breaking this stigma, we need to know that you can still have that religious background, but also seek that mental health support.
What are some things that we can, if you're someone who, I have some experience with therapy myself, 'cause I started therapy 3 years ago, but if you're someone who doesn't know much about therapy or even know how to find the access to that, what's something like, I guess, a barrier that we can kind of break down to allow people to know, like, this is where you would go to get these kind of resources, or this is where you would go to get this kind of access?
Access to treatment has been an issue. Mainly because a lot of people don't know about all the therapists within the community, especially the Black therapists. 7 counties, Our Lady of Peace, big agencies, but you don't know about people like us. So I think it's important that people talk about it more. We do a lot of social media things, and we try to present ourselves that way. And speaking with teachers, I contract with JCPS, so I work within the schools a lot as well. Just doing more community events.
And just using the resources that we already have, like social media. I also forgot to mention that I'm also the founding director of Therapists for Bethesda Wellness. And one huge thing that we did was try to gather a list of all the Black mental health therapists in the community so that people can have like a one-stop shop of just all the options that they have. So we have the contact information, and we also have what insurance they take.
I personally feel more comfortable. I have a Black woman as a therapist, and I personally feel more comfortable being a Black woman talking to a Black woman. In your experience, do you all have people that you feel like rely more on you being a Black woman and like thinking to themselves that I do feel more comfortable talking to you because you look like me, and it's that representation that feels more familial?
Don't get me started.
No, show me to get started. Get started.
When I started off, I worked at LifeSpring. Well, I did my internship at 7 counties as well. I was the only Black student then. When I started at LifeSpring, I was the only Black clinician within the entire department. And every time there was a Black family or a client that knew I was there, they wanted to book with me. So I was like, I can't be everyone's therapist. But I've been in private practice for 3 years, and when they know that you're accepting clients, it's like your phone rings every day. They need someone they can relate to, just on a cultural level. That's the biggest issue. And I'm not saying that white therapists can't perform well as a therapist, because they can, but culturally there's a lot of things that you just can't relate to if you're not,
If I'm talking about, issues that I'm having with my mama as a black woman and
Right.
me as a black woman and she's a black woman, my white therapist is more than likely not going to be able to understand
Exactly.
that relationship. And so now I have to, while I'm trying to address my trauma with you, having to explain things without actually even getting to the source of what the trauma actually is.
Exactly.
You're just like over talking.
Yeah, there's just some things that you just cannot get from a textbook. You have to get that from that experience. Right. And even if you're using African American vernacular English, AVE, there's only, like you said, so much time could be taken in session where you could be doing some type of work, but you have to explain so much information. So I see why it's so important to have those black therapists available. Somebody
who looks like you. It feels more comfortable. It's almost like talking to your auntie, but your auntie happens to have a degree and can give you the tools and the resources and the toolkit for how you can be successful. I hear a lot of people talking about their relationships, and they'll say, "My partner's my therapist."
No, absolutely
we don't stand for that. That's the downfall of a lot of relationships.
No, we're not doing that.
No.
What do you think people are trying to say when they make these statements? Like my partner's my therapist, or my friend is my therapist.
Yeah, I think people try to connect through their experiences, through some of the trauma, and that's okay to an extent. But if you don't get that educated background of mental health, you miss out on boundaries. You miss out on certain techniques that could be helpful, because sometimes when you try to help people who've been through the same things as you might be harmful. When you're not using certain things that we learn about in school. So the partner is your therapist thing is just not very healthy. But when we're in therapy as black therapists, we're giving you love, but love with boundaries. So appropriate disclosure, and, when session's done, we're done speaking to you. But, totally different. It's that love, but with that background and that education around what's healthy when exploring trauma. So
let me add to that. That's so true. A lot of times people think when you go to therapy, you're going to talk. We have a lot of clinical education. It's not just going to talk. We use so many different clinical techniques. The diagnosis alone, there's a whole thick book full of diagnoses that we have to know the criteria for that. That takes a lot of training, a lot of school. So we're not just having you come in to vent. We're actually helping you identify tools that's going to help you. So your mom, dad, cousin, auntie, they cannot definitely be a therapist to you. You have to get that professional help.
Even if they are a therapist.
Exactly.
They're still your
still
family.
boundary.
Yes.
So then that kind of is blurring the line.
Therapists have therapists. I had a therapist. I don't know if you had one.
I definitely have a therapist, especially after COVID. I have a therapist.
Come on. Okay. My therapist has a therapist, and oftentimes I ask her, "What do you talk to your therapist about when you be talking about me?" And she always laughs at me. But I feel like I be in there talking. I talk to my therapist. Girl, let me tell you. And it's funny because, I know she's not my friend, right? Because I'm in a place to understand how, relationship boundaries work. Mm-hmm. But that is what it feels like. It feels like I'm going to talk to someone who, I'm paying them, but I'm paying them to not judge me. Mm-hmm. I'm paying them to give me, to really be honest with me. Because, your loved ones and your friends, they're honest with you, but then sometimes they hold back, right? Because they're like, I don't know how far to take this. But my therapist, she'd be like, no, girl, you was wrong. You were wrong. And she's very open, very honest. With you both being black women working in this field, what has that experience been like? You talked a little bit about how you were placed in a lot of situations where you were the only black person, much less a black woman. So that, I'm sure, has its own set of. But then what is that like, being in this field that is very white and generally male dominated, or white woman dominated?
It can be a lot sometimes. My master's program, I was the only Black person in my cohort. In my PhD program, I'm the only Black person in my cohort. So
Wow.
it can be hard sometimes. And just when we do talk about clients and have case presentations and things like that, you become the spokesperson too of the clients that are Black or underserved. Like, what would you do in this situation? Or how would you explain this situation? That can feel a little isolating sometimes. I also want you all, the other students, to also have this cultural consideration for yourself when you're out in the field. So I feel like that part can be a little difficult sometimes. And a lot of what we learn is westernized techniques. So you have to find your own ways of looking at diagnoses sometimes, because sometimes the way it's in the book is not the way it shows up, especially with the Black community. So you have to have a lot of discernment.
Can you explain that a little bit more? The kind of like the westernized tools and ideals that.
Yeah. For instance, like with depression, you think of someone who's low, sad, low activity, but there's a lot of high functioning depression. There's a lot of anger that can be shown instead of sadness, especially what's socially acceptable in cultures. Sometimes it is to show that you're upset in an angry way versus a sad down way, and you have to learn that. Like, I just know every time like that would come up with my classmates, it was like, oh, this person just has like an anger management problem or something like that because they're having behavioral issues in school. But I'm like, that could also be a sign of depression too. Like that child, like we're looking at their background information and they have a lot going on. So maybe they're just shown in a different way than just crying in a corner. There's different things that you have to understand, have discernment about, because sometimes without that cultural consideration, students, or well, I say children and adults who are in therapy, can be written off as something that they don't even have.
To piggyback on that, a lot of kids are diagnosed with ADHD, and often they can just be experiencing trauma. So we're getting a lot of kids that are misdiagnosed.
A lot of Black children.
Lots of Black children.
And would you agree too with ODD, oppositional defiant
ODD,
disorder?
Absolutely.
Yes, that one is just, when that comes up in case presentations, I'm like, do they
Yeah.
really meet the criteria? I mean, they're having behavioral problems, but are they being deceitful, or is there just a lot going on right now?
Even
Like,
diagnosing younger children with bipolar,
Yeah.
that's definitely a no-no.
No,
You're
no.
not supposed to do that.
wait till you're an
So,
adult.
So there's an age criteria
Oh,
for
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
specific diagnoses.
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Can you tell us exactly what the word, for people who might not know, what does the term diagnosis mean?
That is a specific mental health. I'll use the term issue that you have. As she mentioned, depression, or it can be anxiety,
So it's the diagnosis is
attention
very,
deficit.
very specific.
Yes.
You have to meet certain
PTSD.
criteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of very similar diagnoses in maybe Black children?
Yes. I'm a trauma therapist, so I diagnose a lot of people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You have to be age 6 and above for that. And a lot of times when people think of PTSD, they automatically go to war, things to the extreme, but trauma can come with any aspect of life. Your environment you live in, having significant grief, things of that nature can cause trauma. So I have a lot of kids with that, depression, anxiety. And I diagnose ADHD, but I try to steer away from that because I know that's a common diagnosis that people just throw on kids and want to give them medication. I'm not big on medication. I believe we can solve the issue without medication. Now, if it's extreme and you're still having these issues, we can consider that, but I'm not the one to just say you need medicine.
So you want to try to do other avenues prior to? We can get back to
Yes.
that because I did have a question about that too.
Yeah, I agree. That should be the last option. But I work with mostly adults right now, and a lot of them are from underserved communities. So a lot of them do have the PTSD diagnosis, bipolar, and even with the ones that have certain personality disorders, I still just try to cancel out first two of PTSD first before just writing them off with the personality disorder. But yeah, you see a lot of heavy ones when you work in underserved communities. And just to go off what you said earlier, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of people have ongoing trauma called complex trauma, and I haven't seen the new manual yet, but I think they have complex trauma now as like a
Diagnosis. Yeah.
Yes, I'm so happy for that because before that it was just PTSD, it was just personality disorders. But now it's more recognized that people, just from, like you said, environmental things every day, her whole life, it can cause just ongoing trauma. So I'm happy that's being recognized.
Trauma feels like a word that we've thrown around a lot. And I think
It's
that,
new to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not new to us.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, it's not new. We're true to this. Not new, you know.
Yeah.
But
But like socially,
Yeah,
people
it's
are,
new.
people are saying, "Oh well, like I've been traumatized,"
Yeah.
and you know, I feel like as a community, we're becoming desensitized to the term because we feel like people are overusing it, and I think that we're not actually recognizing that no, people are actually telling you now. People are being more open about the fact that they are experiencing trauma, and it's not just them throwing this word around. But I do think that social media makes people become desensitized to things or not understand things as much.
I can see it both ways. I can see it as people are just learning the term. So, of course, they're using it more, but then also, too, like, some things might be overused. Like, I think, too, like, other words like narcissist and everyone diagnosing themselves with, I remember back then it was bipolar. Like, everyone was bipolar. Now I see the trend of borderline coming in now. Everyone's diagnosing themselves. So I think it's both. Like, there are people who really meet the criteria, but then also, too, I do think it becomes part of public psychology.
yeah. So people don't get on Google. This is happening to me, and I'm bipolar. Please do not do that.
Self-diagnosed
that.
using
No.
Wikipedia.
Come to the
and,
professional, please.
Was it WebMD?
Yeah.
I know very recently, I don't know if you all know much about it, and if you don't have to speak to it, but recently a celebrity couple, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp,
Oh, yeah.
are, Amber Heard was suing Johnny Depp for defamation of character based off of their personal experiences, and she threw out I don't remember if it was her or her doctor, but they threw out a technical term to describe a mental illness.
Yeah.
That is it.
Which
the
term?
for it?
It was, we're talking about the borderline personality
Yes.
disorder. They diagnosed her
Yes.
with borderline personality and histrionic personality disorder.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I feel like you are having a therapist conversation with your eyes with that. But I think where I was going with that is, do you see people trying to maybe utilize their mental health knowledge maybe, and not necessarily their actual, they don't maybe suffer from an illness, but using their knowledge of these illnesses to kind of maybe
For their benefit?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Disability benefits, wanting to get off work and things of that nature. I have a ton of clients and because I take Medicaid, a lot of people will book appointments just so they can get a diagnosis, so they can get SSI, disability.
so there's a resource.
Yeah,
lack of
but
access to resources that we're having there.
I'm not the therapist for that. So don't come to me.
Don't try to
please.
use don't try to use her now. But really talk to her,
Yeah.
because the thing is, these people really probably do need these services.
They do, but as we have to use our clinical judgment to decipher if they really need SSI or
Yeah.
that's our clinical expertise comes in hand for that.
I agree. And I think that some people really have good intentions with it, too. I think people want to make meaning of their lives and their issues that they might be experiencing. But sometimes I do think people get lost in the diagnoses, like with the one I see all the time on TikTok, borderline personality disorder. And people say, I have this, but that's great and all, but also this is not an excuse for behavior that can be harmful to other people. I'm happy that you have this diagnosis and this helps you understand it more, but also it can become a crutch to people when
Right.
you have to still do the work, even if you are aware that you had that diagnosis.
Like you mentioned earlier, someone might say like, "Well, I'm a narcissist," and like that just be that, right? So you could be, but so what are we going to do about it?
Right.
Are we going to actually put in the work? Because just being a narcissist is not okay.
Or
You
they
can't
may
just-
they may come to you and say, "Well, I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I can't work." Well, let's explore that. What's going on?
So what are they?
So
what's the root of these things?
Yes.
Like you said, it could be something that could be worked through instead of getting on SSI. Like there could be something there, a symptom that needs to be addressed before going to that area.
So if they are needing access, right? Like if they are needing, I guess, resources, is that something you would still be able to provide? So like maybe this, you don't have to say you have a mental illness to get these resources. This is something that I can also, we can work together to get you these resources instead. So if they needed the money from SSI, could you all provide them like a resource that they could do instead of taking that route?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
My agency offers community-based services, so we have case managers. And the case managers, what they do is they help the client gain access to services within the community, food, shelter, things of that nature. So that goes hand in hand with the therapist, though. They have to be in therapy for that, and that's with Medicaid regulations. So they technically have to have a diagnosis and have to be in therapy for those services. But as far as other services within the community, we pretty much know. I'm familiar with a lot of services within the community, so I can refer them out.
Community-based services.
Yeah.
Just getting
Same.
access to those resources.
Same. I'm with University of Louisville right now in the counseling psychology program, and we are also partnered with the social workers. And so if they need to be connected, like you said, we can connect them as long as they're in therapy. And then also just knowing like what I know personally, I also connect them with those resources as well.
And that goes hand in hand with just being a culturally competent
Yes.
therapist. I grew up in the West End, so and I was a single mom at 17, so I'm familiar with a lot of resources within the community. Single parents, food stamps, CPS, just having a social worker, things of that nature. So I'm pretty familiar with how to help clients navigate services.
I don't think people realize that as therapists, we wear many hats. You do become that
Oh,
person
yeah.
who has to seek those resources, even outside of just that 1 hour session.
You have to seek them for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You both had mentioned something about medication. I think along with talking to a therapist, I think there's a huge stigma around taking medication if you do need it. I think a lot of that comes between, especially in the Black community, our mistrust a lot of the medical field. And that could be anywhere from therapists all the way up to surgeons, right? Like we just have a generational mistrust of the medical field.
Rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I do think that medication is important. How does someone go about finding out if they've done the work right so far and it's still something that's very prevalent in their life? How do they go about making that or how do you all go about making that decision that medication is what they would need to go to next?
Yeah, just looking at treatment goals and looking at those timelines that we have for each of the goals, and if they're not met and we're seeing that it's just probably not as many steps as we would like to have in those goals, then that would be definitely the time where we would partner with the psychiatrist in our program and seek out medication. So it's kind of looking at the goals and seeing if they're being met in a certain timeline or if they're seeming to be too much difficulty around that.
And for me, they have to be doing the work.
Yes.
My clients know. Listen, you come to me, don't come to me just wanting to get things off your chest. We're actually going to be working on your treatment plan. So they have to be consistent with therapy as well.
Absolutely.
When you say treatment plan, can you kind of break down what that all entails? So is a treatment
Yeah.
plan just like, I'm coming in, I'm talking? And then that's-
Oh, no. We try to make sure they are measurable.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that you can observe. So somebody will come into therapy, tell us their presenting problem, and from there, I usually try to start off with like 3 goals, and they can evolve over time, but just 3 main goals of something they want to do. Like, for instance, my depression's at an 8, and my goal is to get that down to a 4. So that would be a goal, and maybe we'll say, I don't know, like we'll try to get down to that number in 3 months. So it's just finding, I guess, the main areas within that presenting problem, and then from there seeing how we can, I guess, work through each of the issues.
And in the treatment plan, the goals change frequently.
Absolutely.
The diagnosis may change, or you may add a diagnosis. So if your client, for example, is diagnosed with anxiety, later on down the line, you may discover that they truly have depression or another diagnosis. So And once they've completed this particular goal, we'll start on another one. Or discharge. You know, people don't come to therapy forever. We have excuse me, we have clients that come to therapy for maybe like 4 to 6 weeks, a few months, and then we have long-term clients as well. They may come 1 to 2 years, drop out, start back over again. So just depends.
Can you talk a little bit about what a dual diagnosis might be?
That the multiple diagnoses I mentioned. Are you substance abuse as well as mental health?
Yes, that's a big dual diagnosis. So it's just having someone meet criteria for both diagnoses at the same time.
Sorry, I was trying
No,
to
you
look some more
got-
questions. Trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody.
They coming in?
No, some people had said something to me earlier, so I wanted to make sure I got those too. And then a lot of these questions were my own personal questions too. But so I did want you all to speak a lot to mental health issues that kids experience a lot, and how to have these. If I were to have kids, like, how would I open up that conversation to talking with my child, or maybe even the kid that I'm like around or taking care of? How would I open up a conversation with them about how to talk to me about what they might be feeling, to try to work through? I mean, maybe they do have an actual mental health issue, or maybe, you know, they're just experiencing something.
Well, first you have to acknowledge that they're having an issue and know your child. If you see something that's off with them, if they're isolating more, you have to just know your child's personality and know that there's something wrong, and also be acceptable to them coming to you with issues. A lot of times parents will be dismissive to their kids. They'll come to you and say, well, this is what's going on with me, and we'll say as a parent, you'll be fine. So we just have to be acceptable as parents to reinforce that we're listening to them, and we can try to find them help. So.
And I think just to add on to that too, just having an openness when they do, because there might be things too that I think the biggest thing I see with a lot of parents is that punishment piece that we come from, and knowing too when there is a behavior problem, it's not always something that is punishable. Like if it is a new behavior that you haven't seen before, instead of going that route, just having that openness to maybe there's a problem. I know a lot of people, especially like working within schools, when a student is having behavior problems, it's just attention seeking instead of looking at it as a connection seeking type of thing going on. So just also having to change that way of thinking when you see behavior problems come out with a child too.
As a parent, if I am witnessing my kid probably having some, you know, major character changes, or they're like not behaving how they normally do, what would be the best way for me to kind of approach my kid of like, hey, I'm noticing these changes in you, or
Just like that. Just as simple as
trying
you
to,
just did.
you know,
yeah.
because you don't want the conversation to come from a place of like, you don't want to make them feel like there's something wrong. with
Right,
them.
right. Or
Parents
like
have to model that.
like you said before, coming to them like it's a punishment or you're upset. When you do that, they're just going to shut down.
And if I'm someone who's not addressed my own trauma, right? But I also don't want to, you know, traumatize my kid in any kind of way. What can I do for myself? Maybe I'm not in a place where I want to go to therapy yet. But what can I do for myself to make sure that I'm not causing harm to my child unintentionally?
You're not in the place to go to
That's
therapy.
what I'm
yet.
saying. Go to
What's going
therapy.
on? What's stopping you from getting that therapist?
Maybe I just don't access a lot of times, right? Like
Okay.
having the knowledge of the therapist and having just access to that as a resource. Or maybe I just work too much and I don't have the time to seek therapy in person or even virtually.
I know. I'm like,
My answer to that, I feel like it has to be as essential as you going to the doctor's office. Are you going to the gym or whatever you do in your free time? Therapy's an hour a week. So I feel like people say they don't have time, but they most likely can make some time for that.
Prioritizing that, like
Yes.
you would.
Absolutely.
And if you go to church, maybe, or if, like you said, go to the gym, or if there's
Yeah.
like something else that you specifically do for an hour a week, making that one of those.
Because if you can do therapy within your own home, you're set. On Zoom, it's right there in the comfort
Thank
of
you,
your own
2020.
home.
Yes,
Didn't
absolutely.
do a lot, but you let us know that we could do everything on the phone and on the screen.
Yeah, just the best way to work with trauma is just seeing a professional. I know there's a lot of information out there about being a self-healer, but you don't have that discernment or that outside looking in judgment sometimes, so it can be hard to really process that without a trained professional.
You said a self-healer. Can you talk about that?
Yes, please.
I'm very much so on TikTok and everything else, and there's just a lot of people who encourage that. Like there's a page, and it's by a white therapist, the holistic psychologist. And I like some of her content sometimes, but I would say she gets a lot of critiques from the mental health professional community because of all the emphasis on self-healing. Just because there's some things you can do at home, I guess, to continue healing from therapy. Some, I guess, tools that you can use outside the home, but just full-fledged healing yourself is just a lot of things. Again, when you try to work out things on your own, you can harm yourself even more if you just don't have that education. So there's a lot of talk about, I guess, with self-healing, like things you can do at home to reflect and things like that, which is okay, but again, just having that trained professional to just give you some insight and some feedback on your journey is just necessary. So
I have a comment on that. So when you say self-healing, that's like if I'm having an issue with my brain, I'm going to go back and perform my own brain surgery.
yes, exactly.
That was a very severe analogy, but seriously, if we think about what you just said,
most likely I'll make things worse.
Right, you're gonna make
I'm going to bleed out.
I mean,
Listen.
you cannot perform your own brain surgery.
no.
Just as so I think maybe a misconception there might be when we're saying self-healing, we're not saying that like you taking steps to take care of yourself, not that aspect. More or less self-diagnosing, not doing that,
No.
and not saying that you're your own therapist.
I look at it more as utilizing coping skills.
Yes.
Okay.
For example, with myself, my coping skill might be going to the gym. That'll make me feel better in that moment, but it's not getting to the root of the issue.
Exactly.
It's still there. So you always have to dig in deep, and that's where the therapist comes in.
Exactly. It's nice to have things on the side like exercising, like a journal and things like that, but you have to do some work.
So you all are the professionals. So you're already in the community right now.
Right.
Tavia, hey Tavia, shout out to you. Tavia and I, she's from Frankfurt. I'm from Frankfurt too. So we've grown up together. Her question is, what can the community do to help get the word out about mental health, especially within the Black community? So what can we as the non-professionals do to really help you all talk about or get out the word that like these are the things that we need to be talking about, and these are the resources for that. How can we really support you all is what the question is.
Okay. Social media is big.
It's huge.
I post a lot of things on social media, sharing posts, making things accessible that way, so you can put faces with names of therapists. Going to our websites, just getting the names out there. Bad Black Lou is a big platform that people they'll go in and say, hey, I'm looking for a therapist, and people can say, oh, I know such and such, she's a therapist, just things like that. That's pretty
Social
simple.
media, yes, but that's been a beauty. It's been huge. I think it made all the difference, especially after COVID, just having social media as a source. And I think just us as therapists, too, we do a lot of community partnerships, too. So
Yes.
I guess just continue to partner with us, whether that's church, whether that's physical health, medical, any community centers, like just keep partnering with us. And I think that helps to get the word out, too.
So when we're having our events where we have vendors and pop-up shops,
Yes.
Absolutely.
also including that it doesn't necessarily just have to be monetary things or materialistic items, which get those still. Please still continue to shop with these vendors, but but also including mental health services as a part of that to share more knowledge about what's going on. And then maybe you can go ahead and book you an appointment while you're there if their books are open.
Yeah.
Because
Yes,
it
absolutely.
is still a service at the same time. Then we have a question about, so where can we find mental health resources, or other than your personal websites for sure, but do you have any books or specific websites where we might, as people who are not in this field, maybe things that we would be able to actually maybe understand and digest better? Because obviously with you being within the field, the academic purposes of it, you'll understand it differently. But maybe is there something that's much more accessible? You did mention social media though.
Social media, are you talking about referral resources?
Yes,
Okay.
that, and then maybe if I haven't diagnosed, but I haven't gone anywhere else from that, support groups or what I
Okay.
can, or like material that maybe a book that I can purchase. Or
Okay.
My website,
Articles.
you can look on my website. I have resources on there from issues like with suicide awareness, things of that nature. There's a tab you can click on and various different links that you can get resources from on my website.
Can you drop your website? You're gonna drop it again later too.
Yeah, it's tlccoflouisville.com, and it's Total Life Counseling.
Like I said, you are gonna
Yeah,
drop it.
and people, there's a client portal on there too, and I made the booking process pretty simple. People can request a therapist on the link, request a time, and that's it. It's simple. So,
Yeah.
and that's a part of breaking that barrier for treatment as well.
Exactly. And then with me, Therapist for Protester Wellness on Instagram and Facebook, we try to post our referral list occasionally. And also, too, we always have some type of person on staff to answer questions when people message us. On Instagram, we'll get people all the time saying what their issue is and that they really want to speak to someone. And if we can even specifically find a specific therapist with that certain issue, we also try to give them that information as well.
Are there any 24-hour services that either of you are aware of?
No, I do know you can get an assessment from U of L Peace 24 hours. The Brook Hospital.
Yes. Yes, and then we were 24/7 during the movement and during COVID, but definitely slowed down from there. But I do believe, I don't want to say the name because I'm not sure, but there's a counseling service here in Louisville that I do think partners with Crisis, a crisis hotline, and I can find that information later.
Crisis hotlines such as
I think just any crisis. And I know they just had a training recently in Louisville for that, for mental health professionals. So I think just for any time someone's in a crisis and they want to use someone else to talk to first before, having the police knocking at your door for a welfare check, they're trying to make that possible here.
That's gonna
It's
be
hard.
awesome.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while because there's a lot of barriers to that because you're mixing in mental health with getting into the work of police work. But they're trying to make it possible to just have someone else to talk to and de-escalate you before having to go the police route.
we would love that. That would be
Yes.
especially people that look like us. It would be much more beneficial to have someone not holding a weapon to come talk to us when we are in a current escalated state. Just throwing that out there that it's never okay to do that. Someone is already currently escalated. You don't want to re-escalate them. I work with kids currently. A lot of my kids have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I do have kids that have been diagnosed with ODD as well. But I have also witnessed a lot of specific misdiagnoses
Yeah.
within Black girls, right? Or maybe not a misdiagnosis, but not even being diagnosed. So a lot of the Black girls suffer from anxiety and depression, but they don't get a diagnosis of anxiety, depression, or even ADHD. They just get the
ODD.
Yes, the ODD
Yeah.
is the fun one. That's the go-to one for any behavioral issue. I see that ODD one being used first, and that's a problem because that one is connected to the school to prison pipeline.
Yes, absolutely.
Because when you get to the ODD and you become an adult, that becomes antisocial. So they're like, oh, we're writing this person off already. They're a sociopath to this society. So, yeah, I tried to avoid that one at all costs.
I believe that's purposely done.
Absolutely.
I've ran across numerous issues working within JCPS with principals, teachers. they're just not accepting of black kids. I'm just throw it out there. They're not.
We honest here.
And I've had some conflictual issues with them wanting to send 5-year-olds to inpatient treatment when we can go another route. The misdiagnosing issue, and it's a huge problem. So I think more culturally competent therapists and mental health clinicians need to be present. For myself, I'll go to things like a kid's IEP meeting. That's an individualized educational plan. And I'll meet with the parent in the school, the counselor, to see what we need to do to get them the services needed. And I do that because a lot of times if the parent doesn't have a extra person with that voice and knowledge, then they can just do anything because they don't know, so.
So making sure the parents are informed. As a parent, is there specific resources that I can ask my school or my school district about? Maybe I've noticed the behavior changes in my kid, and I want resources, but I don't know what to do. Are there things that I can ask about, like specific resources that I can ask about?
I'm not as familiar because I don't work in the school.
With the schools, you can ask if the child doesn't have an IEP, if they can get one started with that, and what they have to do is collect a lot of data, observations and things of that nature to see if they qualify for that. In-school services, and the therapists within the schools are booked. So they're getting a lot of outside agencies to come in and provide those services. And my company's one. We contract with JCPS, so a lot of times the teachers will try to get those services within the schools. So if a parent can't bring them to therapy, we go to them.
Go to the school.
Yeah.
So then that's good. So Total Life offers that as a service, so you can contact Sharweed at Total Life if you are a parent who is in need of services for your child specifically, or even maybe if you know of a kid who might need some services. That's awesome. I love that you have that partnership with JCPS. I have a question about JCPS recently hired or instituted the mental health professional title. Is there a big difference between a guidance counselor and a mental health professional?
Yeah, they're the mental health professional is basically just a therapist within the school. They have their own caseload, but like I mentioned earlier, it gets full, so they need extra hands to come in. So the guidance counselor just helps with like classes you need and kind of navigate the educational part. And the mental health person is just strictly mental health.
Yeah, guidance counselors are under the school education umbrella.
And the mental health professional is separate. Yes. So I like to think of mental health as like this umbrella of like all of these things that kind of like come off of it. What would you think would be like at the top of that? And then maybe some of like the pieces that fall behind it for my visual people out here, which I'm a visual person.
Based on what?
Yeah,
I guess it depends. It depends on, I guess, what it's based on. Because when we could talk about engagement, things like that, it could look totally different than other things. So,
when you say engagement, what do you mean?
People who interact with clients more than others. For instance, like a therapist would see someone weekly for an hour, whereas with a psychiatrist, it might be every 3 months for 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. So then that would be kind of one of those umbrella pieces of like, you might have a psychologist, therapist, or what did you mention? Psychiatrist.
Yeah, and then I'm in school for psychology, and our big thing is assessments. So doing those mental health ones, kind of like the one you saw with the Amber Heard one where the psychologist took the stand. That's kind of the thing that you would see with psychology. A lot of assessments, a lot of court work, and teaching and things like that. But in regards to clinical work, assessments, therapists, mental health sessions, and then social workers, more of case management.
Okay. Yeah. And my doctor is in social work, so we focus more on environmental issues, policies, things of that nature. Yeah.
Do either of you offer mental health services virtually, such as like Skype or Zoom?
Yes, I do. I'm at Cardinal Success, which is through the University of Louisville, And we're housed in the NIA Center in the West End on West Broadway, and we have free services. And we see people of all ages. Some people are in the school, so some people go to Shawnee. People like myself, we just see people at the NIA Center, so I just see adults. But yeah, our services are free, and we do both virtual and then also in person at the NIA Center.
That's good. We had a question from someone that works within Jefferson County. They were wondering what type of PDs they can host in order to, as a teacher, to help their students who may have an IEP or their students who have been undiagnosed or maybe even underdiagnosed. Are there things that
Host
they can
what
do?
now?
Like professional development, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Professional development. Thank you for checking me on that. To, as a teacher or maybe even as someone within the education field, what can they do to facilitate more of those developments to better themselves as a teacher, but then maybe their cohort as well?
They can incorporate more mental health group. I know I started doing like groups with kids in elementary school age, self-esteem groups and stuff like that. They can get more of us to do that.
You all
I
are
think that's
still
helpful.
getting therapists to actually facilitate these
Yes.
meetings themselves. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I do know of some therapists now who do actually go out into the schools now and do workshops for teachers.
Right.
That should definitely be more frequent than not.
Yeah.
See if I missed anybody. I think you all had mentioned. Did you mention why you actually went into the mental health field? I know Millicent did.
A little briefly, I feel that I grew up in the California neighborhood, 17th in Kentucky. So a lot of trauma, a lot of environmental issues. I was a single mom at 17. And looking back, I kind of wish I would have had me as a therapist. One of me to kind of help me navigate. So I just want to give back.
Do you feel
in
like
that,
that's
yeah.
been able? Have you been able to process your own trauma through the learning that you've been able to do over these years?
Absolutely. But being an effective therapy, you have to effectively deal with your own trauma.
Absolutely.
You can't go through trauma and help other people at the same time. That doesn't work. But it does.
Out really quick.
Yes, it opens your eyes to a lot of issues. We're human too. We have family issues, teenage problems. You know, my older boys are 21 and 19, so I went through the same things with school behaviors and same as my clients. You know, so
Being a Black woman in this field, what do you do for yourself? Right, because I mean,
it's vacation.
we travel through this world as Black women carrying so much already.
Yeah.
And then thank you all absolutely for what you are doing. But you're shouldering other people now. So what is it that you do for yourself specifically to, I guess, help you perform, or even to maybe not even perform, but maybe just to help you exist, really?
I just take a break, and that's one thing I'm going to do. I just got back from Florida, went to Colorado a couple of months ago, so I always have something to look forward to. But even for a daily thing, when I leave that office, I turn it off. I'm back to my personal life. I invest time in my loved ones and the fun, silly, nonsensical things that I like to partake in.
What's something fun that you like to partake in?
Yes, so I've seen you there a lot. Karaoke, I'm there a lot. I like to get my singing on the weekends.
I have to see that.
Oh, you got to come.
I love
I'm
your
sure
microphone.
Invite me.
What fun.
I have
Destiny,
to go.
where is we
I'm
have
always
fun
there.
at karaoke.
Oh yeah, with a drink in my hand, having a ball, and then I'm gonna watch my shows like Real Housewives and just turn it off, and not take myself so seriously sometimes, because you want to, of course, in session, but outside, I guess to just be here, just can't all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm married. We have 5 kids in total. I have a 1-year-old grandson, and my youngest baby's 3. So we are extremely busy. I'm very family oriented. I love spending time with family. What else? We love vacations. I like working out. I'm putting more emphasis on my physical health. Another year I'll be 40, so I'm like, oh, Lord.
Yes.
I'm like,
I
yeah,
love Black
so
women. It's so magical.
drinking more water.
Yes, period.
So are you
Getting
intentional
sweet,
about
yeah.
taking care of yourself just to make sure that you are able to show up for your
Yeah.
clients and then also probably
Our
for your
families,
coworkers and
yeah.
families?
Absolutely. You learn really quick that you can, if you don't have those boundaries with yourself, you can get burnt out really fast. I started out before I became a licensed therapist. I was a resident counselor and did not have that mental health background all the way yet. And I mean, I was taking those stories home. So I was getting that vicarious trauma and I was stressing out and thinking about it before the day started. And then I just found myself like getting weird away and having less energy to give. So now I just put that emphasis on when I leave the office, I'm done. It's about me, and that's the best for my clients because when they get me, I have that energy.
A fresh you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely setting boundaries.
Whew.
I know when I first started in private practice, my phone would ring. I would answer calls all throughout the day, evening, night. I'm like, no, I can't responding to emails. I'll be at a party. I'm like, let me respond to this email. I'm like, no, I got to give it a break and just pay attention to what I'm doing in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Being present. So I like that. Like both of you talked about being present and being intentional. If there was something that you would want, you know, maybe somebody just tuned in just now, what is something that you would want them to take away from when we're having conversations about mental health and mental health awareness and mental health issues? And I mean, all of this really is an umbrella of self-care. What is something that you would want to leave with them?
I would say that self-care is definitely something like going on trips and bubble baths and things like that, but it's also a daily practice so that you don't get wearied away every day. So just like we just talked about, turning your phone off, having a certain time of day where you don't respond to emails, exercise, anything. That's self-care. Every day having some type of routine or practice that keeps you present.
I would say, since therapy is so taboo that it's okay to have a therapist, you're not crazy. It doesn't have to be anything like severe for you to come to therapy. I do life coaching as well. I'm sure you do. Solution focused type of thing. So you don't have to come to therapy for it to be always a crisis or a trauma, something like that. You can come and let us help you navigate issues, just work-related things or career-based, things of that nature too. So it's okay
Therapy doesn't necessarily just have to mean that, like, I've lost someone or I've lost my job, which when those things happen, hopefully we can, you know, find
life
resources.
transitions and,
But it can just be like day-to-day things.
I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm young and I'm in college, but I don't know where I want to go, you know.
So everybody, we
it
can
can-
get access to these resources. And can you all, before we have, thank you so much for talking, especially sharing your own lived experiences. And that can be very difficult to do. And you're talking to a bunch of strangers, right? Normally it's people talking to you about their lived experiences. So thank you all so much for that. Can you all share with everybody where they can specifically find you? I know that you also have other resources listed, but your personal social media, your business social media, as well as any other resources affiliated with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Therapist for Protester Wellness, and that's Protester with the E. And we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page.
Okay. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well, Total Life Counseling. The website is tlccoflouisville.com.
All right. Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you for having me.
Thank you. So make sure that you all find these ladies. So get your phone out right now. If you have your phone, if you're on your computer, you're on your iPad, you're not an existing iPod anymore. If you are on any type of device, look them up on social media right now and go ahead and follow them, like their pages, and go ahead and get on their websites. Get that traction to their website, but then also look at all of the resources that they do have listed. We don't want anyone to think that mental health resources are not accessible. We know that there are barriers that exist in them, but we're wanting to make sure that you all know that these resources are there and they are accessible, or there are people who can help you get that access.
Right.
And understanding that the stigmas around seeking help, the stigmas around taking medication, doing these things for yourself are an elite form of self-care. We talk a lot about what it means to self-care and what it means to take care of yourself. And that includes seeking out any resources that can help you really be the best version of yourself on a day-to-day basis. And no problem that you're experiencing means that if someone else is experiencing something difficult or more difficult than what you're experiencing, your problems are still just as important because you're the one experiencing them day to day. So it's okay to get those resources. It's okay to get help. And it's okay to talk to somebody. And Millicent said your partner is not your therapist.
No.
Don't be worrying out your boo now.
Right. That's your support, but it's not your therapist.
But thank you, ladies, so much for talking to us. You know, sometimes these conversations can feel really heavy. Shoidi made a joke when we first started, and so that helped lighten up the room a little bit. But yes, your mental wellness is serious, but taking care of yourself is so important. So making sure you're doing these things. Check these ladies out. Look them up. Look up all the resources that they've already had listed on their pages. And make sure you obviously go to lovethybelly.org. And I will have all of the information of the people who have been on the show listed under the features page, because you're going to go watch this podcast on YouTube. And you're also going to go to the Facebook and watch it, Fair and Kia and Love Thy Belly LLC. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And I'll see you all next time for our new episode of Love Thy whatever I'm going to be talking about then.